Welcome to Knowledge Unbound. Trucking along, dude. Would you say we're doing well?
We are doing well.
We're doing well. Well, one of the interesting things is for fairly obvious reasons, we record a lot of these in the fall or even the summer before, because it depends on people's schedules, and we don't want to be producing this stuff at the last minute. So I don't necessarily always think about who's going to come after who, right? So this week, it's interesting how today's guest was my mentor when I was an undergraduate. And last week was Aria, who I taught. So, last week's conversation was about me trying to sort of investigate ways in which I try to be the best I could be for her. And this week I got to reflect on me as a student, and it was pretty awesome. I think this is one of those episodes I don't want to introduce too much because we covered a lot of ground, and I hope there are lessons in mentorship here that you can take and that you enjoy. Dr. Lawrence Blumer, a full professor at Morehouse College. We spent an hour talking. Hope you enjoyed. See you at the end. Okay, I know I say this about a lot of my episodes, but this one is really truly special in its own way. I can't stress this enough. I have the chance to interview my undergraduate advisor, Dr. Lawrence Blumer of Morehouse College. There's a lot to talk about, Larry, which I feel it still took me a while for you to be okay to say that, right? Like, I know some people will go years and years until their deathbed and say Dr. blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You gave me your grace and said,
No, I did.
Bryan, you can call me Larry. Okay, so just so my audience knows that I'm not being rude.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, Larry, welcome to Knowledge Unbound.
Thank you so much, Bryan. This is real honor. Okay. It is.
It's the pleasure's all mine. Why don't we start with your journey? Like, how did you get to Morehouse? And I know, okay, we're all professors now. We saw a job, we applied for it. But, tell me about your journey from Michigan to Atlanta.
Okay. I think it's still accurate. I considered myself an academic gypsy.
Okay.
Because I finished at Michigan, defended my PhD, but then stayed on. I stayed on for 2 years and was teaching there and doing research at the same time. But at the same time, I was looking for postdocs and, actively applying. I ended up taking a postdoc at Ohio State. Which,
how dare you?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I got a lot of that. But to be fair, I never attended a football game at Michigan.
How dare you, right?
And I never attended a football game at Ohio State either. But the move to Ohio State was a good one. And I was at Ohio State for 3 years, doing research with Jerry Downhauer, modeled sculpins and other things, behavioral ecology. And from there, the postdoc was going to end. I started looking for jobs everywhere. And I ended up doing a sabbatical leave replacement at Kenyon College, which is just north of Columbus, Ohio. A very nice, exclusive, private liberal arts college. And again, it was a good move for me because I'd never taught at a liberal arts college like that. I didn't really know what that.
Where was undergrad for you?
Michigan.
Oh, so okay, you just stayed through. Okay,
I just stayed through. Well, not exactly. I went to Santa Cruz for a year.
You had to party for at least 1 year. Right?
I went to Alaska that summer.
Okay,
studied ground squirrels.
Okay.
It wasn't exactly staying.
Yeah.
But I was at Kenyon for another 3 years. I would just get one sabbatical replacement after another. I don't know if I was proving this to myself, but I was teaching courses that I'd never taught before and realized, I can do this. This isn't, I can't just be an ecologist.
Right.
I can do other things. And I knew that before from the teaching I'd done at Michigan. And from Kenyon, again, I knew it was going to end, and I applied for everything under the sun. I mean everything. And I don't know if you know this. I trained to be a high school biology teacher.
I did not know that.
Oh, I did.
No.
And
this was after Kenyon or before?
No. When I was at Michigan as an undergraduate,
Okay.
when I graduated, I had a teacher's certificate for secondary education.
Wow.
And
so my wife is a Michigan alum, and her major was education.
Oh no, I didn't know this. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was a little bit after you. Let's just say that.
Yeah. But I mean, if there's anything that characterizes me, I never do anything straightforward. I mean, I didn't major in education at Michigan either. I earned a Bachelor of General Studies so that no one could tell me what to do. And I think you understand that maybe better than your audience is going to understand. Right. But I'm a very stubborn person, which has served me well in some circumstances and terribly in others. And but at the same time that I was studying biology the way I wanted to study biology, I went to Great Britain and earned, basically did all my coursework except my practice teaching, which I had to do back in the States.
Right.
So I did my teacher training in Britain, in Sheffield, which, again, not a straight line.
Yeah.
In any case, I was applying for everything from high school biology positions to community college positions to, college and university positions. And I wouldn't say I was being discriminate about it, but I'm sure I was. I wasn't just applying for anything. I mean, it had to be in my field.
Right.
And Morehouse had a position for someone who could teach environmental studies or environmental biology at that time.
So not ecology.
No, there was no ecology course at Morehouse at that time. There was an environmental biology course taught by Judy Bender, who'd been here a long time. She had moved laterally to Clark, Atlanta, where she could focus more on research. And so they were looking for someone to teach those courses, but it was a tenure track position.
Right.
And I came to Morehouse, and I mean, I was just wowed by it. I understood almost immediately that Morehouse students go on and do really incredible things.
Was Morehouse on your radar at all before that? I mean, I know you say you were applying for a lot of different kind of jobs, but even before, say, you were applying, did the school, its reputation, any sense of the HBCU culture, was that on your radar at all?
No, it really wasn't. No, to be fair, it really wasn't. Now, I knew enough history to understand what HBCUs meant and to understand Morehouse's place in history because of Martin Luther King Jr. And others, to be sure.
Right.
But it wasn't really on my radar. It's not like I focused on this. I mean, I remember when, after I'd gotten the position, some of my colleagues telling me stories about the kind of antics that other applicants, brought with them to try to make them fit. And I didn't bring any of that. And I don't think I would have anyway. But even if I, had a stronger sense of what Morehouse was about.
Right.
But I took to it immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than fair to say Morehouse has been extremely good to me. But I really felt I could make a home at Morehouse.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that I enjoyed the teaching and I enjoyed doing the research. It was deeper than that.
Yeah.
I knew that the students I was working with were really going to go on and do some incredible things.
Yeah.
And that's a really intoxicating thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to know that you're making a difference is important.
Yeah. It's interesting because, and I've told this story publicly many times, that I for maybe similarly to you, I knew of Morehouse. I was coming from a different country, as you know.
Yes.
And when people look at me as somebody of African descent, a lot of times they make the assumption, sometimes unstated, right, that I chose Morehouse because of the incredible Black community that was here. And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? Like,
sure.
I mean, and when I got here, don't get me wrong, I did have an incredible community and I had a great time here and I'm forever indebted to it.
Right.
But I came here because they gave me a full ride. Period, Larry. That's. I mean, I came from a working class family. Right. International exchange rates. That's the only way I could attend college, right? So it's interesting then to have. You understand you're coming into something special, but it's only when you're there.
Yeah, it's only after
it starts to really sit with you. And I think for me, it honestly took me a full year and a half before it started to really sink in what I was a part of.
Well, to be fair, I mean, there were some things I had a sense of. I mean, one of the things I was really clear to me was that there are so few Black ecologists out there. They're just... Minority representation in ecology and in environmental science is basically nil.
Right.
And I remember thinking when I came down for my interview that the best thing I could do as a faculty member here was train students who would replace me. And I don't know that I've done that, but I've trained a lot.
You've trained quite a few ecologists. Yeah. Replace that's a tall order.
Yeah, well, but replace is a different thing. But that was clearly on my radar. I understood that. I think it's an embarrassment to the field that there's so few minority students that are in this field.
Right. I mean, I would only really come face to face with that when I was in grad school and I started to go to large conferences, right? Because the only conferences I had gone to as an undergrad were either like minority serving conferences or maybe undergraduate research conferences on campuses. But when I started to go to ESA and looked around, it's like, oh, wow.
Right. I mean, there might be one or two. That's it.
Pick us out from a crowd of 6,000 and it was startling.
Yes. Yes, that's absolutely true.
One question I want to ask you is about teaching.
Okay.
I want to say this with all the love in the world because I was a bio major here. I think I was pretty well trained, right? But I will say even the individuals involved, I think, are good men, good people. I say men because they were mostly men. But it was only really when I met you, and unfortunately I met you later because ecology and environmental biology were classes that were electives, or at least upper division, so to speak. So I didn't get to you probably till my junior year, right? And of course, back then, which was 2002 or whatever, right? I don't even think the word active learning was a thing. I don't think people, I mean, maybe it was, and I just wasn't reading papers at that time, but certainly I think it wasn't as buzzy as it became later on, right?
Yes.
So I had taken several science classes, which were very much sit, be quiet, look forward, listen for 50 minutes 3 times a week, and hope to memorize as much as you can in preparation for all of 3 times you will get to be assessed on this thing, right?
Right.
Just high stakes, high anxiety type of things, right? And so we get to ecology, we get to environmental study, and all of a sudden, I still remember the case study on the Klamath Basin, where the trade-offs with the indigenous tribes and the farmers and right. I remember that to this day because we sat and we actually did it, right?
Yes.
And of course, at 18 or 19, 20, however old I was at the time, I didn't have a word to describe why those classes appealed to me more, why it sat with me more than the other classes, which were, again, good people, but it was always, it wasn't about the learning, right? So I guess what I'm curious about, and again, this is pre-200 papers on active learning, I'm curious as to what your inspiration was to approach teaching your classrooms in that way.
So this takes me back.
Okay.
I've thought about this a little bit in anticipation of your question, and not that you've given me that question in advance, but even coming out of high school, I resented the way I was being taught. I remember actively resenting the way I was being taught. I was rebelling against having to memorize things, and I mean, I went completely off the spectrum in terms of rebelling. And as an undergraduate, simply picking and choosing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was always attracted to laboratory courses because many of them allowed you to actually do things.
Mm-hmm.
You actually learned a technique. You actually manipulated the material. And I mean, even then, I was picking and choosing. I remember, if 2 weeks into a laboratory course, we weren't doing anything interesting, that was it. I dropped it.
Yeah. You have
and
2 weeks to prove to me this is worth my time. Right.
It really was. And I hadn't formulated any of this clearly in my own head, but I understood then that you learn best by doing things. And I was very much attracted to those kinds of courses. So as a graduate student, again at Michigan, I remember volunteering to teach as a teaching assistant in the laboratory courses that no one else wanted to be in. And
such as?
Genetics.
Okay.
And invertebrate biology. And the invertebrate biology was the course that really, in many ways, opened my eyes because you've got 23, 24 different phyla, and we're doing everything. And students are doing dissections and experiments, and the material is there right in front of you. We had seawater tanks running. This is at Michigan, in Ann Arbor. And I just found it really attractive. And then some of the mentors I had at Michigan we were still doing cookbook labs. Don't get me wrong. We weren't doing active learning in the sense that we understand it now. But there was a sense that we could have students do some work where they were actually manipulating the materials, and that there'd be the possibility of changing some of the settings or some of the circumstances and learning something new.
Right.
And I think that carried on. I mean, in my own head, it carried along in the rest of my career, so that when I finally got to Morehouse, I knew that laboratories needed to be something more than me just giving orders.
Right.
Because although I don't think I'd articulated it very well yet, I understood that if you just give orders, you're just going to get yes sirs.
Yeah.
And that's not the way to train future scientists.
Right.
It's not the way to train anyone for the future. So I think as early as 1996, which was when actually a little earlier than that, my first NSF proposal that was funded was a laboratory improvement proposal. And I was writing laboratory protocols to have students do some actual experiments in the context of a new ecology course that I was teaching.
And this is pre-cures, right?
It's the
course based
the
on
terminology didn't exist yet.
Right.
At that time, so simultaneously with doing that, I became active in the Association for Biology Laboratory Education. And even then, people presenting at ABLE weren't presenting cures, and they weren't even talking about guided inquiry.
Right.
But I think people at those conferences understood what active learning meant.
Right.
And that it
almost
wasn't
by definition.
Well,
right?
yeah, by definition.
Right.
I mean, this is a conference for your listeners who don't know.
And we'll put a link on the site. So
Good. It's a conference that's entirely workshop based.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a conference where the participants are the students, and you're doing a laboratory study, from start to finish over a 3-hour period. It's an incredible experience.
Yeah.
But over time, those ABLE conferences really began to focus much more on not just active learning, but replacing cookbook laboratories with guided inquiry type laboratories. I mean, it morphed over time.
Right.
And that became what's now being called cures.
Right.
And I simply changed with it.
Right.
And maybe I was leading that to some extent.
Well, that's something, I mean, I love a lot of people who are kind of proponents of cures, written on the cure literature. I've read almost all of it. And I say this without any, without any really caveats here, right? But I'm like, I was counting beans and bean beetles long before
they were talking.
Before they were using these fancy names, right? I was there at Hope Hall, 320, like seeing which beans were chosen and why, and helping Dr. Blumer and Alex, I think was at your postdoc at the time, Asian guy.
Oh, yes.
Right,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of come through lab protocols that would last the entirety of a semester. So yeah, I mean, it's just been cool to see that whole mindset evolve.
Yeah, and it was a change in mindset. Even then, when you went through, we weren't talking about cures.
No.
That we weren't using the terminology, and in fact, when the terminology first came out, I remember we didn't want to use that terminology. We wanted to call them CREEs, course-based research experience.
I think wasn't that written up somewhere like
probably,
that?
I'm sure it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the CURE acronym was the one that stuck.
Right.
But it's absolutely true. Even in those early days, we understood that students really got a lot more out of helping design the experiment and actually doing the work and not knowing what the answer was going to be.
Right.
That's what makes it authentic.
Right.
And, maybe more than cure per se, it's about authenticity.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would almost prefer that word. And,
yes.
And I could even tell you, like, I graduated Morehouse 2003. I was a grad student for a very long time because I did a master's and a PhD. I only taught during the PhD part of it, right? And I think I've told you this before, that it was actually teaching, like actually getting into a lab and being a TA is what changed my entire professional trajectory, right? Just fell in love, and I think this is the thing I'm going to get up and do every day and be inspired.
Yeah.
And I got really fortunate because around the time when I kind of fell in love and decided to shift my focus, FIU, where I did my PhD work, got a pretty big NIH grant to do some curriculum redesign, right? So you have to remember, this is around 2008, 2009, right? So all of these CURE, active learning, it still wasn't vogue yet,
no,
right?
It wasn't.
And not only was it not vogue, frankly, a lot of research faculty didn't really want to have anything to do with a teaching-related grant, right?
Right.
And then some of that attitude filtered to their grad students. So along comes idiot Bryan, who's like, oh, you like it, you go be the head TA, do whatever you want. So I got like a clean slate to do whatever I wanted with those labs, right?
Oh,
now,
God.
I was very responsible with it, at least I tried to be.
Yeah.
But I can tell you one of the inspirations that I had, your partner in crime, Chris Beck, who's professor at Emory University. I remember talking to him, I can't remember where or when, but offhandedly, he talked to me about how he taught his ecology lab. That he basically let them come up with a question. He guides them and, and then together they kind of work through how you design. I said, that's so cool. That you're actually doing ecology.
Yes.
So fortunately, I had a little bit of a budget. And so the first lab that I taught, which was the ecology lab, that's what I did. And I mean, all the labs after that was great experiences, right? But I think the novelty of doing that and watching them, put things together, and just coming up with interesting questions. Like one group built a hydroponic system and compared it to a greenhouse, to try to control as much as they could.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting things, and I think the joy and the unknown, but like you said, the authenticity of that experience is what sort of solidified, this is the space. This is what education is.
So what's really opened my eyes, and I know you're aware of this, but I've been involved in a number of different cure models. I mean, aside from the bean beetle work that I'm really known for, I've been involved in the Howard Hughes Medical Institute's phage hunters program since 2010.
Okay.
And I fell into that accidentally. I was brought into it by a colleague. I wouldn't say I was kicking and screaming, but I didn't do it voluntarily. But it opened my eyes. It really opened my eyes to what authenticity can mean.
Right.
And again, for your listeners who aren't familiar with HHMI's program, It's pure discovery.
Right.
It's pure discovery. The students aren't asking the question. They're not developing the protocol.
Right.
It's very light on hypothesis testing.
Right.
But it's so powerful.
And they do this summer before they come in, if I remember correctly.
Well, it
right?
depends on the institution.
Okay, but you did it that way, right?
No, we did it at Morehouse in the academic year.
Okay.
Morehouse did this as an experiment. Our experiment was we were only going to invite incoming freshmen to take the course if they were coming to Morehouse so poorly prepared based on their SAT or ACT scores that we wouldn't allow them to take the first biology course.
Okay.
And so they would have had to sit out for a semester and they'd had to take either a remedial math course or a remedial English course. So rather than just sit out, we were inviting them to come into the Phage Hunters program.
Right.
And not all the students accepted. I mean, we had this long list. We would send emails out. The students who accepted did Phage Hunters with us. Then the second semester, they would be in the first biology course. The students who didn't accept, they would be sitting out of biology for a semester, but then they would come into that first semester.
So you had a natural comparison.
So we had a natural comparison.
Right.
The Phage Hunters students do so incredibly much better in that next biology course. I mean, there's a carryover effect.
Right.
And it's independent of content. I mean, they're not doing virology and viral genomics in the first introductory biology course. In fact, our students would understand something about translation that is specific to bacteriophages that they never get taught in those courses. So I'm convinced it's self-efficacy. Right. We change the way they think about what they're capable of.
Because they're doing a lot of doing.
They're doing.
Right. They extract it from the soil. I think
they're extracting from soil. Yeah. They're isolating viruses from soil and carrying right through to characterizing the virus they've isolated. And each student doesn't know exactly what they're going to get. They don't know what they know they're going to get a virus, or at least they think they know they're going to get a virus, but they don't know what it's going to be. And it's, to use the word transformative sounds like hype, right? But it really is. I saw in that first semester when we only had 9 students what it could mean for students, and I thought, this is it. And that understanding translated into all my other work too.
Right. I wonder, just to stay on the Phage Hunters for a second, I wonder, and I'm sure you may know this because I know you have colleagues all around the country who are part of this program, have this grant. But the way you set it up, right, they've come into this Phage Hunters class relatively naive to the technical aspect of it. And maybe at least on paper, right, unprepared for it, right? And I'd be interested in what the impacts of that kind of class would be, say, like if it was done 4th semester, summer kind of thing, after they took a bunch of... So, and maybe this is the point you're making, right? Is it, yes, there is the content piece of it, but is it just going through a process where you can see that, hey, man, I can do something really technical and do it well. And that is the thing that you take into your other 2 bio classes versus like, I know a little bit about virus structure.
I don't think it's knowing a little bit about virus structure. But to be clear, the implementation of the Phage Hunters curriculum is different at each institution.
That's what I imagine.
There's a lot of variation.
Right.
But David Hanauer, who's done the research on this for HHMI, has shown very clearly that it has a dramatic positive effect on all students.
Okay.
It's just in our case, we tried to push the envelope.
Right.
We pushed it to its limits.
Yeah.
We asked, can we get positive outcomes with students who we predict are going to fail?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah. So does that? What's the question I want to ask? Because the predict they're gonna fail piece, right? When I became a faculty member in 2014, And I think the nature of these things is some of it is just how you're wired, right? For me, I was raised in a very kind of optimistic, believe in people's better angels type of house.
Right.
So I carry that trait in my personal and professional life. So for better or for worse, I think I see all the students, you're a human being. You have all of the biological matter present needed to do anything well, right? And my job is to figure out how to get you to see that and how to show you the academic and professional and personal behaviors, social behaviors that are needed to get you on that path, right? That doesn't mean I'll give you an A, right? That means that wherever whatever your state of readiness is when you show up to my door, I'll hopefully take you a lot further down that path when you leave, right? But to do that, I have to have that belief in the beginning, right? So when I arrived to my first job and failure rates in intro bio was 40-50%, right? There was this thing in the air where it almost was assumed well, students failed it, right? I'm not trying to say students don't have responsibility. They 100% do, right? But I also see them for where they are developmentally, right? And the sort of, if you could change the conditions around them, if you change it, and by conditions I mean psychological, social, infrastructural, right? You might get a different outcome, right? So I think this is essentially what you've done with Phage Hunters, but you had to have started with a belief that that's possible.
No, you're absolutely right. I have that belief. So I'm going to tell you a little story.
Yeah, please.
Morehouse is not unique in this. Historically, and it was true when you were a student here, that pass rates in the first introductory course were 50%.
Larry, at Krong Forum, right? You all still have that? Okay.
Oh, yes.
We got to look to the left, look to the right speech.
Yes.
As an entire freshman class.
Explain that to your listeners. It's an awful tradition.
And I think it's also not unique to Morehouse,
Maybe
right?
not.
So it's essentially the dean of students or whoever he was would say, one person next to you will not be here next year. The clear implication being that that person would have failed out.
Right.
But the unclear explanation is that it's because of them, right? So it's basically telling you, figure it out. And if you can't, it's on you.
Right.
Which is a pretty deficit-minded way to look at
no, I agree entirely.
this whole experience.
I agree entirely. There was a point early in my career at Morehouse where I took over the lecturing in biology. The first biology course, Biology 111. And I remember when the faculty member who regularly would teach it came back, he was very adamant in wanting to know what was my pass rate. Because he'd heard that I was doing things very differently and he was very concerned. And he was relieved to know that I still was getting 50% pass rate. This was early on in my career, but I was
Thank God.
But I was never convinced that was inevitable.
Right.
And it's not inevitable. It's absolutely not inevitable.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you're going to save every soul.
Right.
But the problem we have is that good teaching does not necessarily result in good learning.
Right.
And
it takes two. It
takes two, and maybe we don't fully understand what good teaching means if you don't get good outcomes. My own experience has been that we can get dramatically better student outcomes if we pay attention to what matters. And part of that for me is that we should be doing a lot less lecturing because it's not an effective way of learning. And we should be doing a lot more experimentation, experimental design, writing and speaking, and doing.
Being human, maybe?
Yes.
What is that like? So I think you and I, similar in a sense, I know this happened during grad school. It happened during my first 7 years as a faculty member. I think now where I am now, my department is very bought in to I dare say, progressive way of approaching the class, right? But there certainly was a time when some of these things you're talking about, you would have had to convince colleagues.
Oh, no question.
And if anything, people would have seen you as irresponsible even, right? Or radical.
Well, the response you'd get would be, well, we have to expose our students to these things.
Right.
And my tongue-in-cheek response would be, people die from exposure.
That is very tongue-in-cheek. But what was the journey like? Because I think now, I mean, part of it is time, part of it is there's more and more evidence out there. What has the journey been like, getting that mentality to penetrate? Not just in the department, but maybe around STEM at Morehouse.
So in the department, my department's bought into it.
Okay.
They fully bought into it. And that's gratifying.
Right.
I don't think we've converted every laboratory course to the extent that I think we could. But we're on our way. We're going in the direction I would like us to go. There was a while when I was doing workshops here at Morehouse on guided inquiry.
Yeah. You used to bring people to campus. And yeah.
So it's not as if people don't know what I'm up to and don't know what the outcomes can be.
Right.
But we've not seen the other STEM departments embrace this. Biology has. But I've not given up.
Right. Let me ask you this, because this is something I've been working on with a colleague who's a sociologist. I was doing a lot of reading about John Locke, Francis Bacon, right? Second Treatise on Government. Now, I asked people, I say, oh, you probably did this in high school, assuming. I was told that most Americans did this at some point in high school. I was quite surprised, or maybe I shouldn't have been, to find out the answer is no, right? But as you know, right, there's this trail from Francis Bacon, who inspired John Locke, who uses this kind of scientific design to think about how democracies and society should be formed, and then Thomas Jefferson, who's inspired by John Locke, has this sort of kind of scientific method language in the Declaration of Independence. We submit these truths to a candid word. I did the 1920 Scientific Democrats led by John Dewey. So I kind of have this very highbrow, high-minded way of seeing the value of teaching the way you just described, not just because it's how we do science, but also it has some relevance to how we live our lives in a society where we're supposed to be listening, where we're supposed to be able to critique, accept critique, be in, have difficult dialogues and not be emotional about it, right? There's some transference here, right?
No, absolutely. It's about being open-minded.
Right. At the base of it is being that. Have you been able to kind of lean into any of that? Not that you have to convince a lot of people at this point, but I'm wondering, even especially now in the times we're in, how much we need that mentality of open-mindedness, of respectful inquiry, of working through differences, of asking good questions, of being curious.
It's a really good question, Bryan. I haven't put it in those terms. What we have done, and again, you're familiar with this, the most recent project that Chris Beck and I have done with Nicole Girardo and other colleagues was to ask about the importance of student autonomy, to ask the research question. And this was a 5-year study, a 6-year study that we did. And we found that both student attitudes and student outcomes aren't much changed when you compare lower autonomy classes to higher autonomy classes. Now, to be sure, all of these classes are cures. The only difference is whether the students decide what the research question is or whether the faculty member brought the research question to them. Now, once they have the research question, the faculty members, in both situations, still taking them through a design process. They have to develop hypotheses.
Yeah.
So it's a cure in both cases, but it's not. It doesn't seem to be necessary for students to have that highest level of autonomy that would be the gold standard for, say, PhD research.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Though to be sure, some PhD students never get there. But that's another issue. We won't go there.
Next episode.
Next episode. Maybe not with me, since I don't train PhD students. But the reason I mention that is that I think in some ways it was a disappointment because we fully expected higher autonomy to result.
Well. Yeah.
But in some ways it's a relief because faculty who were hesitant to implement course-based undergraduate research type pedagogy might be more inclined to do it if they don't lose even that level of control.
Right.
In other words, if a faculty member can come into a class and say, class, this is the question we're going to address this semester using these tools, that maybe that's an easier activation energy to overcome. And at least in my own head, I'm thinking maybe we could increase, or maybe we can decrease the reluctance of faculty to embrace this kind of learning and teaching modality if they know they still have some control. Yeah. Because it doesn't seem to matter that much.
Yeah, that's a really interesting finding. May want to ask you more about that offline. Tell me about doing this kind of work, and by this kind of work, I mean, ecology and environmental biology, this type of work. In a bio department, and this is not unique to Morehouse, this is everywhere, including where I teach, where usually upwards of 90% of the students are laser focused on medical school. And then sometimes the institution biases their curriculum and the infrastructure they build around the students to privilege that, right? Which makes some sense, but it not everybody, and I was your student and I was one of them, had that in mind. What was it like to bring that kind of mentality into a pre-med focused place?
Well, it's always a challenge,
right?
Because students are skeptical of you trying to teach biology when they just want to learn pre-medicine. As if that was something separate.
Right.
I mean, I'm constantly, and still to this day, correcting students. No, there is no pre-medical major.
Right.
But I think my approach has always been to appeal to their selfishness, which may be an odd thing to say, but my training is in evolutionary biology, and so I don't think of selfishness as necessarily a negative. It can be a positive. And all of these students who want to go to medical school, they know they need to get good letters of recommendation. I tell them right up front, I said, the best letters of recommendation you will ever get will be from someone who you do research with. They will know what you're capable of doing. They will know how motivated you are. They will know what your capacity is. They will be able to write you a letter that's so unique and so positive that it will accomplish what you want, but you have to do the research to get it.
Right.
So there's that part. The other part I try to appeal to, and I guess this is, I'm taking the positive road here, right? I tell them all the skills they're going to learn in a research lab are transferable. The communication skills, the ability to manipulate materials, all of that's transferable. And medical schools know that.
Yeah.
The people on the admissions committees know how authentic research experiences really matter. And they demonstrate someone's discipline and their dedication. I mean, all of these, there are all these soft skills that go along with it. But again, you have to show that you have those.
Right.
If all you've done is taken courses and gotten good grades, well, everybody applying to medical school's got that. And so,
what's going to set you apart?
What's going to set you apart? Yeah. Oftentimes what I'm telling students is, what kind of narrative do you want to tell? What kind of narrative do you want to have?
Yeah.
And for some of them that works.
Right.
I mean, for others, no. They're just laser focused. I've got to get the highest GPA I can possibly get. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to talk students down from retaking courses,
right?
Which is silly.
It's like you got an A-, dude. Relax.
Oh, well. But even if it wasn't an A-,
right,
if a student got a C in a course, I'm telling him, don't waste your time retaking this course. Everyone expects you to get a better grade the second time you take it.
Right.
Take a course you've never taken before and show us what you really can do now.
Right.
That's the narrative you want to tell.
Yeah.
I play this game with a lot of students. I'll say, imagine you're in an interview right now, and they're looking at your transcript. They say, well, I see you got a C in this course. Can you tell us about that? And I say, okay, so there are two possible stories. One is, well, I retook the course and you can see I got an A the second time. And then the other story is, well, yeah, I was having some trouble that semester, but as you can see, I took a more advanced course, in 2 semesters later and got an A.
Right.
Which story do you want to tell? It always convinces them.
Right.
Now, does that really make that big a difference to them? I don't know. But to me, it's the same story about getting students who really want to get engaged in research. A lot of these research programs go begging for students, particularly students of color. And our students just have to look.
Right. What has it been like mentoring non-pre-med students?
It's such a pleasure.
I know it's at this point there's probably hundreds, right?
Yeah, it is. It's always fun because there's so many doors that can open for them.
Right.
And it's one of the other stories I'm telling students, that they should pursue what they're passionate about.
Right.
That if they're passionate about it, they'll do it really well.
Right.
And if they do it really well, people will notice. And if people notice, doors will open. It always works that way.
Right.
It's hard to convince students of that. It's fun. It's, because every student's different.
Yeah.
And every student comes with a different portfolio. There was a recent student I was talking to. He says, he was telling me, well, he really doesn't want to go to medical school. I said, well, what would you like to do? And he said, well, I'm not so sure, but, I'd really like to do something that improves public health, that addresses disparities in access. I said, my eyes opened wide. And I said, there's some incredible things you can do. And you don't even have to major in science.
Right.
I often will tell students, if you really want to make a difference, you don't want to be a physician. Who are the people who are running the hospitals? Who are the people who are telling the physicians what gets done and what doesn't get done?
Right.
Who are the people who are deciding what gets covered and what doesn't get covered?
Right.
They're not physicians.
The infrastructure around the physicians.
It's this whole, medical industrial complex, but someone has to run those things.
Right.
Why shouldn't our students run those things? And they can.
Right.
And so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
advising those students.
The interesting thing with mentoring, and I think it took me several years to understand this, and maybe it took me becoming a mentor myself at the faculty level. I did mentor as a grad student, but I think just having some years under your belt, I think before that point, I maybe saw mentoring in the very after school special way, in that like there's these clear things you tell a person and then they change their behavior and then they go off into the sunset and become great kind of thing, right? And what you find out is sometimes, many times, maybe even most times, some of the best mentoring you do, you don't even realize you're mentoring.
Yeah.
Right? You don't script it, right? You just you show up, you be a good person, you believe in the students, and there's a inner belief that something will stick. And let me just give you an example. I'm not sure if I ever shared this with you. So there were several pieces of great advice you had given me while I was here at Morehouse. One of them was if I was interested in environmental stuff, which is basically what I called it at the time, right? Try to do different internships in the summer to see what really kind of catches your eye, right? So the first summer I did the Sylphin Molly research, with you, but through Emory.
Right.
Second summer I did, I worked with a consulting company up in Norcross, Georgia. Like Chris Beck hooked me up with that. the third summer I was out at Smithsonian in Edgewater, Maryland, doing crab research, right? But by the time you and I think really kind of met, it was after my sophomore year or like near the end of it or something. And I don't know if you know this, I almost flunked out of Morehouse. So I came in, I was doing okay, right? I think I was probably at like a 3.4, maybe 3.3 by the end of the freshman year. Then took another hit, and so by the time I went into my second semester of my sophomore year, I think I was about a 3.2 something, or I don't remember the exact number, right? But guess what I did? I don't know who told me this was a good idea, but I was in Calculus 2, Physics 2, Organic Chem 2, Genetics, and Philosophy.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
That's a heavy load. So
the good news is I got an A in Philosophy. And the others not well. And so it was the kind of thing. And so the requirement to keep your GPA, to keep your scholarship was 3.0, which is not particularly high. It's a B average, right? But by the time November came, you're doing the calculations. And remember, you just have like 3 exams in these classes.
Right.
So you're looking at these finals and it's do or die, right? And I'm already kind of calculating how am I going to tell my parents, because if I don't get a scholarship, I'm gone. Like I'm a F1 student visa, I'm back home. This is it kind of thing. So the short version of it is, thank God for the curve, which I don't believe in, but it happened and it saved my life, that I ended up with a 3.01 cumulative. And
you'll excuse me for laughing.
No, or you could laugh. No, this is like, 26 years ago or so. And did a lot of soul searching that summer. I went on done the internship and then I came back to Morehouse and I was working in your lab. But I was doing a terrible job. And you actually fired me. Like, you didn't like say you're fired, but you kind of graciously say, maybe you should be thinking about something else, or maybe we can focus on building the environmental club, which we did. Right? And what I tell audiences to this day, and I tell the story a lot, that this is my 3rd year at Morehouse. And you were the first person to ask me, why is it you want to do environmental conservation? Everybody else, every other professor, the only questions they were interested in, why you not getting A's in my class? Why you not studying hard? Like, it was always very, and many of those personalities at the time were very kind of hierarchical, right? Like, so you're there stiff and scared out of your mind, and you were the first person to ask me my why. Like, why was this important to you? And through a series of conversations, and again, even in that time, I couldn't sit there and tell you 22-year-old Bryan like understood the psychology of what was happening. But now I could look back and that's when you looked and said, wait, there's so much I can do. And here is why I care about this, right? And so that's when Franklin and I joined the Nature Conservancy. That's when we joined the Environmental Alliance Initiative thing. It was like a 9-college. We formed the club. We did a environmental audit of campus.
Oh, this was through the Associated Colleges.
Correct. Yes. All of that happened in my junior year, and that's when I started to look into internships like outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and really thinking about grad school. And I think I can confidently say that when you were asking me those questions, you probably weren't thinking I'm going to change your life.
No,
right?
Absolutely not.
But I do think that semester back and the reorientation I had towards what it meant to learn and what I was going after, it carried so much more significance that I can't see my journey today would have been possible had that not happened. So I want to say thank you.
Wow.
I want to say a heartfelt thank you.
You're welcome.
And I don't know if you you've taught thousands and thousands of students, right? But it was quite a unique time. And I wonder if you kind of remember that process when I was in your lab and we started the club.
So, I remember, and I showed you the photograph.
Yeah.
I remember when we had a little group of students, and everyone was doing projects, and we would go to, the Georgia Power Environmental Laboratory and report to them.
Yeah.
and they were helping, they were providing us some financial support, which was wonderful.
Right.
The kinds of questions I was asking you just came from me. I mean, I guess it's my own bias. I mean, grades are important, but grades aren't the end all.
Right.
But you're right. I wasn't thinking consciously, gee, I'm going to change Bryan. Not at all.
Yeah.
I was probably thinking, what do you want to get out of this?
Right. Well, and here's the other reason why that question is important. I think you know this because you met my parents on graduation day. That I'm a first generation college student. I mean, kind of like my dad did a couple courses, letter certificate, but that was it. My mom did night school when I was young, and my sister was in college in the Caribbean, right? But in terms of kind of navigating Morehouse College, one of the things I tell audiences when I tell that story is I did finally tell my parents about I almost flunked. And they didn't say to me, are you using metacognitive practices? They didn't ask that stuff. Right. They're just like, well, if it doesn't work out, you can come home. We love you. And they were very sweet about it,
yes,
right?
And supportive.
So when you ask a student like that a question, like, what do you want to get out of this? When you're first generation, that's not a question you've thought of, right? Like just getting to Morehouse.
Yes.
And seeing graduation as a possibility is a victory in and of itself. Like, sure. Forget, now, so when you do that, right, and this is, again, hopefully part of the mentoring lesson I would love people to take from this, is you are furthering people's North Star, right? You are a student who for whom getting to that campus is a victory. Yeah. You are giving a new marker for what victory could be that you may not have thought of until you ask that question.
That's right. No, you're right about that. And now I can't get it out of my mind, right? But it's not what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
The mentoring part's really interesting because I've never done any training in this at all.
Larry, nobody in the United States of America has done mentoring training before they became a faculty member, unfortunately. But
and maybe it is unfortunate. So I think it comes from a place of trying to be honest and thoughtful.
Yeah.
And mindful and constructive. And I don't know what the outcomes are going to be, right. but I know that if I can't do those things, I shouldn't be a faculty member.
Yeah. I feel like when the other thing that's kind of, could have probably played a role in this is that during the time I knew you, and not just during Morehouse, but beyond, right? Like I remember when you were talking to me about letting your daughter drive your car, right? Like right out. and all the things you're going to put in place, right? I mean, I know she's, you're a grandparent now, right? So I know like that thick of your career.
She still drives way too fast. For the record.
For the record, okay. But I know you were in the thick of parenting, right? A high schooler, right? I'm parenting a middle and an elementary school boys, and I can't help but see the cross pollination.
Sure.
In how I think about my mentoring them and mentoring students. So I'm not gonna tell the audience anything about your age or any time. I'm not gonna say any of that stuff, right? But I know I could confidently say that you're at a point where you're looking at the sunset and thinking about what your next step is, right? If let's say you left tomorrow, which you're not, but let's say you left tomorrow, and you had to write a couple of sentences and leave on your desk that told the next person who took your office how to be successful on this campus right now. And just for context, ladies and gentlemen, I am actually recording on the campus of Morehouse College. It's a real privilege to be here. I'm in a building that was not here when I was here. Ray Charles Recording Center.
Well, Ray Charles, what what do we call it? Performing
Arts Center. Yeah,
yes.
RAPAC.
RAPAC.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a lot of memories. See the first Whitehall where I lived, right? Anyway, back to the question. If you had to leave a couple of sentences for that person, what would it say?
This is a really interesting question. It should be an easy question.
Well, maybe not though, right?
Well, I'm not going to answer it directly.
Mm-hmm. I'll take it.
We're interviewing candidates for a position in the department right now.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they ask the same question, how do you support faculty, new faculty? What do I have to look forward to if I were to come to your institution? To me, it's part of the same question.
Right.
Goodness, I think the most important thing is, the advice I would give anyone who came to the college is keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be easily discouraged.
Right.
Remember who you're here for. But don't forget to take care of yourself too.
Yeah.
You don't want to die at your desk.
Right.
But you can really become deeply embedded in this institution. To the point where people refer to you as brother, which is a strange thing, but it's real and it's sincere.
Yeah.
You want to be decent with people, and not worry too much about getting credit.
Right.
If you do those things, you're going to succeed here, and you'll do more than succeed. You'll change lives.
Right.
I think. Not that I think about that.
Yeah.
But working at Morehouse is a real privilege. It's been a real privilege. But I didn't come here to transform education or to make a big impact on the African American community. Far from it. I came here to make my career. It just happens that I'm here and I get these collateral benefits.
Right.
I think. I view them that way.
Yeah.
Some colleagues, not close colleagues who know me, but colleagues who don't really know me very well, talk about, that, it's a wonderful thing that I'm teaching at Morehouse College. And I think, what are you talking about? They pay me. They actually pay me.
It's actually the job.
Yeah, it's actually a job. It's not volunteer work.
Right.
But, people leave good jobs that pay well.
Right.
It's more than that. Morehouse is a real community. And it's a privilege to be part of that community.
Yeah.
But it's also a responsibility too.
Right.
And I haven't hesitated to engage in that.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I guess if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be here.
Right. What would it be? 30 years?
I've been here 35 years.
35 years. Wow. Wow. That's impressive, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you willing to spend the time with me. I hope deep in your heart, even if you don't see the examples every day, that the people you've mentored are trying to pay that forward, and spreading that goodwill to the students that we have the privilege to mentor and teach. So thank you.
Bryan, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been very enjoyable.
More for me, I think. Knowledge Unbound is brought to you by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. We are a product of the Rios Institute for Racially Just, Inclusive, Open STEM Education. Thank you so much to my undergraduate mentor, Dr. Lawrence Blumer, for spending some time being willing to go down memory lane and explore some themes. Just really hoping that our conversation provided some richness for you. Segev, what did it provide for you?
This episode hit a bit close to home when he was talking about how he was spending his time just sitting in class, trying to memorize several things before a quiz or an exam or what have you. And it just reminded me of my early years here at FIU, which if some didn't know, I took Chem 1, Physics 1, my very early years, and I was exposed to all the ordeals that bio, chem, pre-med students had to deal with. It was always a bunch of memorization, and I'm like, wow.
Is this the point?
Yeah, it's tough out there. And granted, I wasn't not following their footsteps because computer engineering and bio, two completely different things. Mm-hmm. But it really just puts into perspective just how stressful it can be sometimes, and how people
not just stressful, but maybe pointless, right? That's especially for you as an engineer. I mean, you by definition you're being trained to do things,
right,
to solve problems,
right. And the thing that I'm starting to realize is like it's more like that entire thing is it's more focused on like memorization instead of learning and applying what you've learned.
Yeah.
Not putting it into practice, which, you know, for me as an engineer, as you mentioned, it's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
So,
and I know this is, you know, I've had the pleasure of knowing him, you know, after my undergraduate when I fell in love with teaching, and so I know through our conversations over the years how much that is his mindset. But I also feel, and I guess I hope, that the way in which him and I talked about that and talked about the human side of what it meant to invest in a student versus just telling them information, I hope it gave people a different way to look at what teaching and what mentoring could be. So that's the note I want to leave people on. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our producer, Mr. Segev Amasai. Have a great week. Have a great week mentoring. Have a great week being a student. And have a great week being excellent to each other.
The problem we have is that good teaching does not necessarily result in good learning.
Right.
And
it takes two. It
takes two, and maybe we don't fully understand what good teaching means if you don't get good outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My own experience has been that we can get dramatically better student outcomes if we pay attention to what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that for me is that we should be doing a lot less lecturing
mm-hmm.
because it's not an effective way of learning. And we should be doing a lot more experimentation,
mm-hmm.
experimental design, writing and speaking
mm-hmm.
and doing.
Being human, maybe?
Yes.